Hi, welcome to my home and Lofty Questions. My name is Terry Finnegan Lynch. I am a certified health and life coach, a nurse, and a Reiki master. And I'm also a mother, a daughter, a sister, a grandmother, and a friend. So like you, I wear many hats. And they're all important. What I do know is that you are important as well. And if you have been here since our pilot episode, welcome back and thank you. If this is your first time here watching Lofty Questions, welcome. We're so glad that you're here. We have a YouTube channel that you can subscribe to, Lofty Questions with Terry Finnegan Lynch. And if you type that into the search bar and hit subscribe, you'll be notified when we have new material onto the site. This program was born out of the COVID-19 challenge, specifically shelter in place. You know, when that big pause globally affected all of us, when we went inside and there was a rewiring of our lives like we've never seen before, there was this opportunity. And as I experienced it, I wanted to see if I could up-level my life to experience the COVID challenge in a way that I became a better person through it. And that's why we're here to ask lofty questions. In the pilot episode, the lofty question was, who am I in the COVID crisis? And who do I want to be in the new norm? In our second episode, the lofty question we asked is, what have I learned about myself that I would not have known without the shelter-in-place order? So building on that, the lofty question of today is, what is my unmet need? So the reason we ask lofty questions is so that we can reveal something, and we do that through a paradigm. So episode 1, the pilot, we asked, who am I in COVID, and who do I want to be in the new norm? And the paradigm that we responded with was, the big pause gives space for us to make choices, and choices create change. The second episode, we asked, what am I learning about myself that I would not have known without this experience? And the paradigm there was, the meaning someone makes about an event is more relevant than the event itself. And my answer to the first two was that I had discovered that I was very lonely. So in this third episode, what we're asking next is, what is my unmet need? Prior to COVID-19, I had this experience that I always called my driveway blues. I would visit family and there would be so much fun, connection, dinner, music, chatter. It was wonderful. And the night would end and I would go to my car and I would put the key in the ignition, look through the rearview mirror and see my son and daughter-in-law at the kitchen sink, snuggling together, putting the last dishes away. And I would get really sad, and I called it my driveway blues. So I would call my sponsor. She's known me for 17 years, and we would talk about this. She understands this loneliness experience, and she would help me before I got to the end of the driveway. She would remind me, this too shall pass. And it would. What happened during COVID-19 and the shelter-in-place order is that it did not pass. Day after day, week after week, the driveway blues were present in this home. So my unmet need, instead of being this just static, you know, that I could ignore, really became a bullhorn of loneliness. So we're going to answer what to do with this, with my unmet need, in Paradigm Corner. So join me over there. A paradigm is a clever way to answer a lofty question. But what is it? Well, it's not an absolute truth, but it is a very clever way of looking at a new idea in a new perspective so that you have new possibilities when you answer the question. So our lofty question was, what is my unmet need? And the paradigm we're going to use today is how I do one thing is how I do everything. And I'm going to use the river right outside this loft to explain how that works. Imagine the river is your wellness, who I am, how am I feeling. And what is true for the river is true for us, that along the bank of the river are streams that feed the river. And for us, the streams of our wellness are what we refer to in coaching as the big five. Our health is kind of an obvious one, but also we have career, money, relationships, and that which is greater. And so how does this affect the river? Well, if our river, your river, is your wellness, and the streams that feed the river are toxic, pollution, what happens to the wellness of the river? Well, it's compromised. So how I do one thing is how I do everything. So let's look at health. That's easy. The paradigm today was talking about my shelter in place crisis and how it affected my health, that I became sedentary and TV became my companion and I was eating without mindfulness, and it was obvious that my health was not doing well and therefore my wellness. And when we look at how I do one thing affects how I do everything, then I can see that my career is also struggling in that depression of loneliness. What do you mean? Well, when I approached my career, I wasn't enthusiastic. I wasn't invested. I wasn't caring. I wasn't trying. So my career was affected and a little toxic. And then when you look at my relationship with money, well, I was spending on Amazon as if it was my best friend. That doorbell ringing with a package on the other side felt right, but it wasn't. I was spending money on things I didn't need and for a reason that wasn't right. So my health, my career, and my money are affected by depression and loneliness. And then what about relationships? Well, my relationship with myself certainly changed, and my relationship with others did too. I wasn't reaching out to my grandkids on FaceTime. I wasn't writing letters. I wasn't reaching out on social media. And I certainly was not embracing who I am. And then that which is greater. So what does that mean? In the spiritual realm, it's a power greater than ourselves, whether it for you be God or nature or a mentor who may have passed away. What happens when we are in some kind of funk is that can be affected too. And it is usually. And what happened for me is I stopped praying. I stopped talking to the God of my understanding. So here we are with this paradigm. How I do one thing is how I do everything. And if that is true, that a toxicity such as depression, loneliness, anger, whatever it might be, affects our overall wellness, your overall wellness, then what would happen if we shift it to a positive? So if I do something good for my health, it will too also do something good for the big five, for the streams that feed the river, the wellness of our lives. So what we're going to do next is go over to a story that explains how this COVID experience played out in this question, what's my unmet need, and the paradigm of how we answer it. There's a quote that I live by. I love it. It's by Ralph Waldo Emerson, and it goes like this: once I make a decision, the universe conspires to make it happen. And that's what happened. I made a decision to bring a dog into my life in response to an unmet need of loneliness. You might remember that I was talking with my coach, and she wisely asked our lofty question today, Terry, what is your unmet need? And I was able to go inside, use that pause that we talked about in our first episode, and feel my heart, feel my mind. The beautiful thing is that when I made that decision and I had that choice to bring a dog into my life, before she even arrived, the decision alone changed my health. I was hopeful. I was optimistic. So I got energetic. I slept better. I went outdoors more. I cleaned my apartment and ate well. So what's important to look at is our paradigm today, right? Is how I do one thing is how I do everything. So when the loneliness was affecting all of me and the wellness of my river, what happened when I changed my mind and brought happiness and abundance into my life? Well, as I described my health, what happened next was my career. I was so enthusiastic. I wanted to do more. I wanted to reach out. I wanted to talk to people. And the curious thing is that this show was actually born out of that COVID crisis, shelter in place. So yes, what a fascinating thing to have happen. What about money? You know, what happened? Remember I was spending, Amazon was my friend? Well, I started to look at that. I didn't need stuff. I saw my money had new value and new purpose, and it became more of an investment than something to spend for joy. And so that was a wonderful shift. And relationships, they changed too. What was so great was being able to reach out to friends and go for walks. One decision affected my health, my career, my money, my relationships, and something greater than myself, because I clearly was in gratitude, and that happiness allowed me to be thankful and prayerful and more in community with the world. The purpose of a story is to anchor an idea. Our idea was, what's my unmet need? The solution was answering it and seeing how it applies to all 5 parts of our lives. What we do next is talk to one of my guests, and usually she will sit here with me. But as COVID has done to a lot of us, it changes things, and Holly can't be with us in person. So we're going to do a Zoom call, so stay tuned. This is my favorite part of the show, when I get to introduce a very special friend who is here to share how the lofty question and paradigm have played out in her life. And fortunately, I have this very dear friend, Holly. She's going to share her story with us today. But we met in coaching school out in California during a retreat. We shared a box of pizza. And what I remember most is that in that hour or two that we were together, I found a soul sister. And so here we are a few years later with different paths. I stayed on the coaching path, and Holly found something just as brilliant for her life. And so I'm going to segue over to you, Holly, and just say hi, and then we'll come back.
Well, I do remember that pizza. It was very, very good, I will say. But I think it was the company, honestly, that made the pizza so good. So thank you for that introduction. And yes, Terry, I've known you for a long time. I'm just honored to be on your show. This has just been amazing. I've watched the first couple, and they're awesome. So thanks for having me. And as I always say, I think everybody needs a Terry in their life. So I think every 3 or 4 months, it's kind of a pattern that I say that, so something comes up. So thank you for having me on here.
Oh, you're so welcome. It's fun when, people experience coaching and then can apply it in their lives and still reach out for help to just, move the needle a little bit more. And what I love about our journey together, Holly, is what went on for you prior to the COVID thing. Because what we're talking about in Lofty Questions is how our experience in COVID is remodeling our lives. And the fact that we're both nurses, trained in coaching,
both CBD advocates. We're both parents. We got an awful lot of hats that we both wear. How that plays out has been very, very different for each other. And so I'd like to kind of go back to that 2018-19 shift that your family went through. And then we'll kind of relate to how it expanded a little bit more during COVID. Okay. Tell me about that.
So I feel like starting there is a great place because in December of 2018, I was truly in the middle of that hamster wheel of life that I think many of us find ourselves on. And, we were truly representing the 40-40-40 plan, I like to say. And if you don't know what that's about, certainly you can Google it. But, essentially you work, 40 hours a week for 40 years and you hope to retire on 40% of your pay, which probably hasn't been enough up until then. So why would we ever think that it would be enough to retire on? But I was definitely smack dab in the middle of that. I've been a nurse for 20 years, and the last 14 years of it has been in anesthesia. I've always worked full time, and we were truly just kind of going about life. Waking up, going to work, coming home, eat if you're lucky, and go to bed and do it all over again. But something happened that I couldn't really continue on that path. And, we were in what I like to call a really dark place in our lives where my husband and I, we have a blended family, and our older children are in their 20s now. But our daughter together was 9 at the time, and she was struggling more than most people do. And, but during that time, for some reason, something had shifted. I don't know what it was for her. But she started having anxious attacks where she was complaining her heart was racing. She was telling me her throat was closing. She was asking me if she was going to die. She then started to really withdraw from all the things that she loves. She no longer wanted to take piano classes. She didn't want to sing at open mic night. She wasn't drawing anymore. And we were struggling. And she hadn't slept in 4 months straight through the night. So we were just really on this struggle bus. And it kind of hit me as a nurse. I really didn't know what to do. We had approached our older children when they were younger with like attention type things with medication. That's what the doctors told us to do. So we did go that medication route when they were children. And my husband's very against that, I would say. I just kind of follow along. I'm in the medical model. I'm in the nursing, model. I'm in the healthcare field. And that's you just kind of follow what the doctors say. But it just didn't feel right with her. We have gone through a lot of side effects. Personally, it was just our personal journey with medications for our older children. We just wanted to try something different. So we were going about this 40-40-40, and something happened that, kind of gave us a little pause. And, we did luckily find CBD, and we have now partnered with the CBD company. So that's another part of our journey. But, that's kind of what was going on for us at that time. And that was, the first moment I felt like, okay, something needs to give here, with this hamster wheel that we're on. We did find great results with CBD, and our daughter has done very well since then. But of course, so 2019 was kind of our shift in our family. We really started to transform. And, of course, what we do in one part of our life is how we do things in all the parts. And so for me, I started to have a better sense of balance in just all the different areas. We were feeling better with our CBD use, but we were also sleeping better, which was helpful. We were getting along better, my husband and I, because, of course, now we're sleeping. And, so all those things started to fall into place. And we started to cast this vision of what we wanted for our lives. And one of them was to homeschool Kaylee in the future, our daughter. I had always wanted to do that from the time she was younger. I knew she was different. I knew she had some things about her that were definitely challenging and were challenging me as a parent and as a person, as a child of God. So we were just on this path, and things were, going pretty well. And then COVID hit.
So I'm going to stop you there because when you and I chat and we get on that place where we're not just telling a story, we're really in the feeling of that. I want to recall that when we had a prep conversation before this interview, you were explaining the marvel of what all of this 2018 triggered, which was your self-care.
Yes.
Right? That, the wheel, the continual, we've been doing this for a decade. It feels successful, yet, and I think what happens in that, and you mentioned it happens to a lot of women, it happens to a lot of men, that we neglect ourselves, that we start to forget that without my own self-awareness, how can I be available to the rest of my world? And I wanted to circle back and mention that was a key element to your shift, because yes, things started to really get sad and dark in December, and we know that those are opportunities to pause and look at the choices that we have, right? And the experience of our past, whether it be, children and using a certain modality and next generation and trying to choose something else, but also in everything about what we're doing. Your parents live with you now. Rob's got multiple businesses. He's like a mini business guru.
Yes.
I love his confidence. He's amazing. His back can't handle it, but to just kind of recap about your 2018 is that I think it kind of reflected the model that we grew up with of marching out, my 5-year, 10-year plan, and a lot of like statistics and goals and things like that. I remember coming into my 20s and buying my first house and seeing it all going to march out the way that it was supposed to march out, and then like real stuff started to happen, and I think that's what happened for your family, and it really allows us to reassess, how am I doing this? Why am I doing it? There was a segue where you were introduced to the CBD and Green Compass, and I know this because I know them well too. But it was also a business opportunity for your family to take in the new values that you care about. Not only does the product work for you, but you're looking at the Big Five, which our episode is talking about. How we do one thing is how we do everything. And what is my unmet need? So now that you're in 2019, if we look at that question, what is my unmet need? I'm wondering what it looked like in 2019. And then how it shifted again, because 2018 we knew that we had to take care of my daughter. And that was the tail end. But in 2019, there was more about who am I and how can I heal myself before I heal my family. And talk me through a little bit about how that affected the Big Five in that year, and then we'll go to COVID.
Okay. So, my unmet need truly is saying yes to self, to take care of me first. Similar to the oxygen theory, put your oxygen mask on first before you help others, is so true. And I have kind of been on this path for a long time, but when I did start to take this role of, being a business owner, because that was what I was doing. I was working full-time in nursing as well, but I had to step back and I had a lot of challenges. How do I say this? There were so many places in my life that I was not saying yes to me, and it wasn't just being a mom. It wasn't just being a nurse for my patients. It wasn't just being an employee of my company or, being a child of God or being a wife to my husband. It was all the things. So although I was starting to say yes to, say, I don't know how I want to word this, saying yes to myself in bettering our finances and paying off debt and things like that, but it was also about getting closer to my family, increasing my spirituality, taking care of my health. I had avoided a lot of those things for years, and so it's funny how when you do say yes to yourself in one area, that truly it does have that domino effect, which is fabulous. Of course, when it's a negative, it also has the same domino effect. So it's either your tire's nice and round, or you're going to have a nice flat tire. So during that year, I started to build a team of people who joined us in business, and our finances really started to change. So one of the areas that I really grew in was leadership, which was not a place that I had ever seen myself. So it was a struggle, saying yes to me, having the time for me, because I really couldn't be a leader for others without doing that. And I failed a lot. I mean, I made a lot of mistakes and learned a lot along the way. But it is paramount for me anyways, that was my unmet need, to say yes to me first. And I did start to do that, but I will tell you, even, you had mentioned that I've had coaching with you, training with you. I had done coaching training with you, but that is not the path that I've taken. And yes, I've learned the things, and I utilize them in what I do, but it doesn't matter whether you're a life coach, whether you're, a psychologist, whether you're a therapist. You may know all the things, and yet you still find yourself going down that rabbit hole into those habits. They come right back up. And so that was kind of trickling back in as I was starting to grow as a leader. Those two things were kind of happening all at the same time before COVID. And I think that might even be my aha, is the fact that I did not realize how far I had come in just 19 months of, from or 20 months or so since, we had sort of the mini pause, and then we had the great pause. So for me, it has been just seeing how far we've come.
Beautiful. I couldn't agree with you more, because I know all of you. As a family coach, that's important to me, is to know everyone in the family. Whether I'm working with all of you or not, and that's exactly what I've experienced, and I'm so glad to be a part of. And I can't thank you enough for being my friend, and in a colleague, and an inspiration. Just throwing out a couple more hats there for you to wear.
Right, thank you. Accountability partner.
That's right. Connection, COVID improved our connection.
Yes.
Truthfully, we were together in Las Vegas, and that was freaking off the charts great. But I needed you during COVID, and you needed me, and we ramped that up. And that's another thing about COVID is, I ended up reaching out to people more often than I would when I was marching on my own drum. So thank you, Holly, for being here and anchoring that we all have an unmet need, and if we look at it and answer it, how we do one thing will affect how we do everything.
Well, that brings us to the end of our show. And before I go, I'd like to say thank you, very big thank you, to Lunenburg, our hometown, and to all in our broadcast family. We've been here a couple of months and want to give a little recognition to those who have joined us. Nearly all of Cape Cod. Thank you so very much. We also have Bridgewater, Foxborough, Brookline, the Stowe area, a town up in Vermont named Newport, and Northern Rhode Island. So our broadcast family is growing, and we truly appreciate that you're on this journey with us. I do hope that Lofty Questions has helped you ask what is your unmet need and perhaps see how to answer that in a good, healthy way so that your river of wellness is supplied in a bountiful way. If you have any questions, we'd love to hear from you. loftyquestions@gmail.com is the best way to reach out with comments, questions, or ideas. So thank you for being here. We're very grateful that you joined us and look forward to our next episode in September.